Okay, here we have the 8.8-inch Legion in front of me. And this one here is called RG Nano. This is the smallest handheld I have ever owned. When you put this thing side by side with the Legion Go, you will see how small this thing is. The RG Nano is really pocketable. The only downside with this handheld is the D-pad. If you ever own this handheld, you will know how bad this D-pad is. As you can see here, the D-pad is so loose and undersized. In this video, I will show you how to install the custom-made D-pad and buttons into the RG Nano. This is going to be an easy task to do. Okay, here on the left side of the screen, we have the custom-made D-pad and buttons installed. On the right side, we still have the stock button and D-pad. As you can see, the difference is huge. Okay, now let's go ahead and install those custom-made D-pad and buttons into your RG Nano. The first thing you need to do is turn off your device. Then remove the SD card. As we can see, there are 4 screws on the back, so we need to remove those 4 screws first. After all 4 screws are removed, now we can flip the back cover to one side. Just be careful, the battery cable is still connected with the back plate. Then we need to disconnect the battery cable. So to do this, just gently hold the battery connector and pull backwards. So when you try to disconnect this cable here, just slowly pull it back, it should get disconnected. Okay, now we have the battery disconnected. Then we can remove the power button from the side. The power button is pretty small, so make sure you don't lose this button. Okay, now we need to disconnect this ribbon cable. All you need to do is open the tab first, and then pull the cable slowly back. It should get disconnected. I will push this cable away from the motherboard so we can take out the motherboard easily. Now it's time to remove the screws on the motherboard. There are 8 screws need to be removed here. So just take your time and remove these 8 screws here. If your shoulder button just falls out like mine, you can just put it back and continue remove the screws. Okay, once all the screws are removed, now we can take out the motherboard. So just gently lift it up from the shell. Okay, this is all we have here. If the plastic cover on the USB-C port falls out just like mine, make sure you put it back in the correct orientation. Okay, now let's take out the rubber membrane from the front shell. Then all the buttons are exposed to us. We can take out every single one from here. If your trigger button falls out during this process, make sure put it back. Okay, now let's put all the new buttons and D-pad into the shell. Okay, now I have all the buttons in. Next, put the rubber pad back in. Then put the motherboard back into the shell. Just make sure the ribbon cable on the right side is clear with the motherboard. Then put the power button back to its position. Then we can put the 8 screws back to the motherboard, and they are all same length. Okay, now all 8 screws are in. Next, we are going to connect the ribbon cable here. But make sure your power button is not falls out. If it does, just put it back. Then we will connect the ribbon cable here. Just slowly push the cable into the connector and then lock it. Then we can put the backplate next to the shell and then plug in the power cable. At this point, make sure all the trigger buttons and power button are installed correctly. Then we can close the backplate. At this point, it's better to make sure there is no gap on the shell, and also make sure all the buttons are installed correctly. Then the final step is pop in the 4 screws in the backplate. As you can see, the D-pad and the button is much better than the stock one, so the D-pad actually has an ultra-fat texture on the top, which actually will give you a better gripping experience. Now we can pop in the SD card and turn on the device. Yeah, that's pretty much all for this one, and now you have a new D-pad and new buttons, and everything just feels much better than the stock one. I hope this video is helpful. If you have any questions regarding installing the button, please let me know and leave a comment below. Thank you.